when I think of blogging now, or any kind of online activity, I'm thinking of the next 5 to 10 years at least, because that's how brands are built. So with a blog, you know that you're going to have that blog for the next 5 or 10 years. And let's be honest, it's not going away. And while new software and platforms and so on might come out, people are still always going to want to read. So first and foremost, think of the long term. The next reason why you need to build a long-term brand with a blog is ownership. So if you think of the internet as layers, so let's say layer 1 is what you build a blog on top of. That's layer 1. It's also the same layer that Mark Zuckerberg and Ev Williams built Facebook and Twitter on. So Facebook is built on top of layer 1. Twitter is built on top of layer 1. When you create a Facebook page or an Instagram profile, or when you create a Twitter handle, you're building on their layer, the layer 2. That's what they own. You don't own that. But when you build a website and when you build a blog, you're building on top of layer 1. So that essentially means that you're a competitor to Facebook. You're building a competing product for eyeballs to Facebook. Now that might sound a bit ridiculous given the size of Facebook, but it is. You know, the more people that build their platforms on top of layer 1, the more competition Facebook has, essentially, or Instagram or Twitter or YouTube and so on. So with layer 1, you have the ownership. With layer 2, you don't own any of that. Any algorithm change, any change with terms of service, and, you know, you can be out of there. We've seen that already. It's old news, really. The Facebook algorithm, that has just completely disappeared now. You're lucky if you get 1% reach. It's all paid for. Whereas 4 or 5 years ago, you could get like 60, 70% reach. So the amount of money that was spent on building those Facebook pages and now they're just worth nothing is just kind of makes the point, really. So that's the reason number 2, ownership. Reason number 3 why you want to build a long-term brand with a blog is you can essentially build your own media empire. Well, let's call it a mini media empire. Because now with blogs are just not about the written word anymore. You can integrate podcasts, you can integrate videos, they're great for imagery. And with WordPress, where the vast majority of blogs are built on these days, it's changed so much. So as I mentioned, 2005 is when I first started my own WordPress blog. Now WordPress is a completely different animal now to what it used to be back then. It's much more functional. It's much more easy to understand. There's more features, there's more plugins and so on. And with WordPress now, you can have your own mini media empire. That's yours and you can do whatever you want with it. I know WordPress really well. I know for a fact that I can build a publication using WordPress. You know, if I had journalists and people writing for it, I could easily build a very robust media publication that is built for search engines and built for social sharing and so on. But it's getting the writers that's the most difficult part for me anyway. And even some publications, the New York Times used to use WordPress for their blogging section. Whether they do now or not, I don't know. I think they use their own proprietary software, but for a long time they use WordPress. But there are different companies now like Vox Media. They've got their own proprietary software and publishing software that they use. But again, for a long time, WordPress was used. TechCrunch, huge blog. Well, it's a media publication. It's not a blog. It started off as a blog, but now it's a media publication and they still use WordPress. Mashable, built on WordPress, still is on WordPress. So, you know, the tools are at your disposal to create your own mini media empire. So why would you want to build on top of Instagram? Why would you want to build and spend all that money on top of LinkedIn? Like, yes, use them, but don't kind of depend 100% on them. The next reason why you want to build a long-term brand using a blog is content. So what's the half-life of a tweet? Maybe 24 hours if it goes viral or if it gets a bit of traction. Usually a couple of hours, if that. The vast majority of tweets have a half-life of maybe an hour or 2 hours, depending on who's tweeting and what kind of content it is and so on. But they don't last very long, let's be honest. And they're not meant to either. And again, like a Facebook post, well, Facebook posts don't really have any kind of traction. They literally don't really get seen much at all. So the half-life, again, not very long. An Instagram post, 24 hours, maybe a bit more. Again, it depends on who's publishing it. With a blog, you can have content that can last you for not just days, not just weeks or even months. You can have content that lasts you for years. And If you can write a blog post that gets a lot of visibility, gets a lot of traction, maybe people see it and share it, and it's original, then that blog post can repay you for months and years in search engines.